Hello everyone, welcome to Probability and Statistics for Data Science. Today we're going to talk about a very important topic in practice, which is the interplay between causal inference and hypothesis testing. Let's get to it. We're going to discuss the relationship between hypothesis testing and causal inference, and the best way to begin is with an example. In a past video, we discussed the free throw shooting of Giannis Antetokounmpo, which is one of the top basketball players in the world at the moment. So Giannis's free throw shooting is not that great, and when he shoots at away stadiums, the fans taunt him. They yell 1, 2, 3, 4 to try to hurry him up and get him nervous. And this doesn't happen at home. So in a previous video, at home games. So in a previous video, we studied this issue from the point of view of hypothesis testing. Our conjecture was that his free throw percentage at home would be higher than away. The null hypothesis is that the free throw percentage is the same at home and away, and we chose a test statistic which is the free throw percentage at home minus the free throw percentage away. If this difference is very large, then this is obviously evidence against the null hypothesis. We designed a parametric test. We chose a significance level of 0.05, and we obtained a p-value which was below that significance level. So we established that the difference between the free throw percentage at home and away was statistically significant. All right. So what does it mean for this difference to be statistically significant? What does it mean? What it means is that if we define a random variable, which is the free throw outcome, and another random variable, which is the taunting of the fans, so fans yelling at Antetokounmpo, which happens at away games and does not happen at home games, based on our hypothesis test, we can very firmly declare that according to the data, the probability of him making free throws when he is not being taunted is higher than the probability of him making free throws when he is being taunted. Okay? That is what the data are saying. Crucially, does this mean that taunting causes his free throw percentage to decrease? You might be tempted to conclude that, but that is not necessarily the case. Here we're in the realm of causal inference, and it is not necessarily the case because there might be confounding factors which actually produce this causal effect. So maybe when he's away, he's more tired because they have to travel, or he misses his family, or or he has changed his food or his patterns or something, and that affects his free throw shooting. There could be systematic differences, which we call confounding factors, that account for this difference, so that it is not really the taunting that is causing the decrease in free throw shooting. So here we have a result that is statistically significant, but it does not imply the existence of a causal effect. Let's take a look at another example. In the video on multiple testing, we try to evaluate the impact of different players on their team performance. We had a test statistic, which was the difference of the mean point differential of the team when the player was playing and when they were not playing. We applied a permutation test with Bonferroni's correction to account for the fact that we were testing many players. We saw that there were, I believe it's 8 players, which were statistically significant with p-values that are below the Bonferroni threshold, which indicates that their team had a higher mean point differential with them than without them in a way that is statistically significant. What does this mean? We come back to this question, which is a very important question to ask ourselves, right? What does this actually mean? Well, it means that we're pretty sure that the conditional mean of the point differential with these players is higher than the conditional mean of the point differential without these players. Okay, we're quite sure that on average, the teams had a higher point differential with the player than without the player. Does that mean that the player caused this increase? Well, again, no. Okay, it doesn't necessarily mean that. And here we have a very good example of what can go wrong when we take a statistically significant result and we immediately assume that it implies a causal effect. One of these players for which the difference is statistically significant is Bruno Caboclo, who was playing in the Toronto Raptors during these years. If we look more closely, he only played 24 games over 4 years, so he missed 200 games. Were the Raptors winning because Caboclo was playing? I want you to stop and think for a moment whether you think that was the case. And that was not the case, right? So he was playing exactly in those games where the Raptors were winning by a lot. He was probably playing towards the end of the games. They typically put in weaker players that are usually out of rotation in games that are, already decided. And for some reason, they put in Caboclo for the games where they were winning by a lot. So it is not that the Raptors were winning because Caboclo was playing, but rather Caboclo was playing because the Raptors were winning. Okay? So this is another very good example of a result that is definitely statistically significant. It's pretty clear that in the games where Caboclo was playing, the Raptors were winning by more than in the games where he was not playing, but that does not imply a causal effect. So we have to, go back to the realm of causal inference. We have several videos about this that you can review if you want. But the point is that to identify a causal effect, we have to be sure that the outcome, the potential outcome, and the treatment are independent. In the case of Caboclo, they're definitely not independent because Caboclo is being chosen to play based on the outcome. When the Raptors are winning by a lot, then Caboclo plays. This is as if we were testing a vaccine and we were checking whether someone gets a disease or not, and if they don't get the disease, then we give them the vaccine. The vaccine is going to seem very effective, but that's just because the outcome and the treatment are not independent. How can we ensure, this is the potential outcome, by the way, of course, that if the treatment has an effect, then the observed outcome is not going to be independent with the treatment, just to make that very clear. Again, you can check the videos on causal inference. So how can we achieve that the potential outcome is independent with the treatment? Via randomization. This is the main tool to ensure that this independence holds and that we can assign causal effects when we observe from the data. So let's take a look at an example. When they tested the COVID-19 vaccine, this is specifically the Pfizer clinical trial, around 43,500 patients were randomly divided into a treatment group of 21,000 patients, almost 22,000, and a control group of almost 22,000 patients. And it was observed that there was 8 cases of COVID among the treatment group, the people that received the vaccine, and 162 cases among the control group, the people that did not receive the vaccine. We can apply a 2-sample Z-test, like the one we applied to Antetokounmpo's free throws, to determine whether this difference is statistically significant. So here our null hypothesis is that all the patients come from the same group, like the vaccine is actually having no effect. So they're all IID Bernoulli with a certain parameter theta null. Our test statistic is the infection rate without the vaccine and the infection rate with the vaccine. And what we find is that the p-value is minuscule. It's below 10 to the minus 23. All right, so here, what can we conclude? And here we see really the interplay between causal inference and hypothesis testing. They have complementary roles. This is the main lesson that I want to communicate here. They're complementary because if we're asking, is there a difference between the control and the treatment groups, then we can say that there is, because the difference is statistically significant according to the hypothesis test. So the hypothesis test tells us we are not seeing random fluctuations in the data. The treatment group has less infections than the control group. That is, like we can be quite sure of that. Is the difference due to a causal effect? Well, hypothesis testing cannot tell us that, but we have randomized, right? We have assigned patients randomly to the control group and the treatment group. Because of that, we can assert that this difference is due to a causal effect. So hopefully you see here how the roles of causal inference and hypothesis testing are completely complementary. In A/B testing, which is a very powerful tool in industry, we combine causal inference and hypothesis testing to determine whether two options or more options. Here I'm saying two options because that's where the name A/B testing comes from, right? You test A against B. So there's several options when designing a product or having to take a decision, and you want to see which one is more effective. Well, what we do is we combine causal inference and hypothesis testing to determine this. So how does A/B testing work? Users are randomly assigned to each of the options, and then because they're randomly assigned, the difference will reveal a causal effect. Then hypothesis testing is used to determine whether the differences that are observed are actually statistically significant. So here is an example that I found online about Obama's presidential campaign. They were trying to determine whether an image or a video on their website of the campaign would be more effective. Here the metric of interest is sign-up rate. So what users of the website would then sign up to receive emails about the campaign. So it turns out that when they put images on the website, 14,000 out of around 155,000 people, so 9%, decided to sign up. When they put videos, 10,000 people out of 155,000 people, so about 6.66%, decided to sign up. Crucially, the users were randomly selected to be shown an image or a video. So here we again apply a two-sample z-test as in the case of Antetokounmpo's free throws. The null hypothesis is that there's no difference between the videos and the images, and the test statistic is the absolute difference between the images and the videos. The sign-up rate for the users that saw images and the users that saw videos. And again, the p-value, as in the case of the COVID-19 clinical trial, is extremely small. So this is definitely statistically significant, and we can determine that the difference reveals a causal effect because of randomization. This is crucial. If we hadn't randomized the user assignment, then we wouldn't be able to say that the difference was due to this causal effect, that images are actually causing users to sign up more frequently than videos. A secondary point here that is actually very important, and we will talk about in a following video, is whether this result is actually practically significant, because you might have noticed that both in the large clinical trial and here in this A/B test, the p-values are extremely small, and this is because there's a lot of participants. We have hundreds of thousands of participants, which means that we will detect even very, very tiny differences. Those tiny differences might not be practically significant. We'll talk much more about this in a following video. So not necessarily, but again, we'll talk more about this in a following video. What have we learned here? We have learned here that statistical significance does not imply a causal effect, and that randomization and hypothesis testing have complementary roles. Essentially, hypothesis testing tells you that what you're observing in the data, the differences you're observing in the data, are not due to random fluctuations, and randomization enables you to state that these differences are due to a causal effect. And that's all I got. Thank you very much.